Hi, film photography fans. Time for another review. Since we're all in lockdown and no one can get out of the house much, and here today in England it's raining, so I thought I'll do a little camera review just to share my passion about film cameras and talk about a line of cameras from the Ihagee company. It's a East German camera manufacturer. In fact, it was a former German camera manufacturer before the war, and because they were based in Dresden in East Germany, they became an East German camera manufacturer. So they produce a range of 35mm SLRs, starting with what they call the Kine Exakta, which was made in, I believe, in 1936. It's actually the first 35mm single lens reflex camera ever made. So, at that time, the most popular type of 35mm camera was the rangefinder camera, from the likes of Leica and Contax. However, single lens reflex cameras weren't really known then, especially not in 35mm. So Exakta was the first one, and then after the war, they managed to get the factory rebuilt in Dresden, and they started making lots of models of the Exakta 35mm film camera. I have a few with me. I have a passion for collecting those because I simply love the way they look. The reason I started looking at Exaktas is because the first camera that my father ever bought when I was growing up, and the one that I remember the most, was called the Exa, and this is what the Exa looks like. So it's a little baby brother to the full Exakta camera. It had limited shutter speeds. I think it goes up to 175th of a second. But it does take the same lenses as this bigger brother, the Exakta. And the lenses weren't made by Exakta themselves. They were made by other companies like Carl Zeiss Sienna, Ludwig Meritar, a number of others. So there's a whole range of lenses. It's basically a system camera. Not only can you obviously get different lenses as you would do in any other 35mm SLR, but you actually get different viewfinders or waist level finders. I have this waist level finder with this one, so it allows you to compose your shots by looking down and then taking your picture afterwards, which is really nice. However, there's also what we call prism viewfinders, which are the traditional ones that you would get with normal 35mm cameras. So this is the first one that I really wanted to get. This is called the Exakta Varex IIa. This camera looks like a jewel. It's actually incredibly beautiful. If you look at the metalwork, if you just look at the whole thing, it's a fully manual camera. There is no light meter, there's no battery. And none of these Exaktas have batteries or light meters or anything like that. So you'll have to rely on an external light meter or Sunny 16, or just use an app on your phone. However, this particular one it's built like a tank. It's just absolutely beautiful. Just have a close look at this. This particular lens is a 35mm f2.8, so I'll just take that off just to show you what the camera looks like without the lens. So again, absolutely beautiful. Look at the action. It's got a left hand winder arm and takes the picture that way. So it's a cloth shutter. So you have to be careful with cloth shutters in those days because the mirror was not a return mirror. So the mirror comes down when you take the picture, so you can see the mirror there. Obviously you compose, and then when you take the picture, the mirror disappears, so you can see the cloth shutter behind it. Now what happens is, if you say you've got your lens mounted on this camera, such like this, and then you don't have a lens cap on, and you leave the camera somewhere in the sun, the rays of sunlight are going to focus on the back of the camera and are going to potentially burn pinholes into your shutter, which makes it completely useless, obviously, because it's going to have light leaks. So if you are going to leave the lens on the camera and leave the camera on the shelf somewhere, not in a camera bag, then always put a lens cap on it. It's really advisable. So that's the first one that I got. You can see it's really built well. So the actual prism finder here comes out and you can replace it with a waist level finder as with the Exa that I just showed you. So it's really flexible. It's a proper interchangeable system camera. Now quality went down as you know with time from the Exakta company. So this one is absolutely beautiful. Later on, so that was the Varex IIa. Later on they produced what they call the Varex IIb. So the logo changed. It became, for me, a lot less interesting. It wasn't the engraved, embossed logo on metal. It was like a plastic logo that's been put on, you know, with glue. Still the same lenses, still the same lens mount system. The body is exactly the same. The backs are interchangeable. The prism finders are interchangeable with waist level finders. The lenses are all interchangeable. Still has a very similar feel, but the build quality isn't as good as the earlier models. And eventually they started making more and more, you know, models with instant return mirrors. I believe the last one they did was called the VX500 and the VX1000. I have a VX500, but it's broken. I bought it simply to get the waist level finder off it because it was cheaper that way than to buy the waist level finder on its own. But you can see that these cameras, so that's got the Carl Zeiss Jena 50mm f2.8 on it, and you can see here what happens is if I step down the lens just to show you, can you see how the lens closes down? These weren't automatic step down type mechanisms built into the cameras. So in order to close down the lens before you take the picture, you have to have the mechanism built into the lens, and some lenses had those mechanisms built in, so you can literally, as you press the button down, it closes the lens and then it takes the picture. Whereas with the earlier models, those lenses weren't available, so you literally have to have, so as with the Exa here, if you step down, if you actually close the aperture down, it will close. You can't really see it. It will close the lens down, so that makes it dimmer when you're viewing the image. So obviously those later mechanisms were far more useful. So really, just to summarize, these are great cameras to collect and use. They're absolutely beautiful, and I think they made lots and lots of them, so you probably find one if you're really interested. You'll find one on eBay, on Facebook Marketplace and other marketplaces. So so these are the Exas and Exaktas. I'll do a full review once I get a chance to take some images with them. Just recently got those. Yeah, thank you very much. Bye.